Hello, hello. Welcome back to Divinely Uninspired. We are episode 15. We're doing episode 15. We are not episode 15. That sounds like a rap name or something, which we're going to talk about rap stuff because
sweet.
Because we got the Super Bowl coming up. I'm really excited about that. I'm here with Jeremy as always.
How are you guys doing?
Pretty good. Also joining us, April. April, glad to have you.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Good. April is wearing her shirt on Sunday.
Oh, God.
We're excited.
So excited. Such a big week.
It is a really exciting week.
I've actually got a shirt to replace that, but that's
You
another
can't
story.
replace it.
You got to wear it. And then Penny is with us today. Hey, Penny.
Hey, how's everybody doing?
Great.
Awesome.
So we've got a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about the NFL playoffs and let Jeremy brag for a minute, and then we'll go over some interesting stuff that's coming up with Super Bowl. We got a lot to talk about, but before we do anything else, here's the theme song. Here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. You're listening to Divinely Uninspired, podcast by Journey Church Shepherdsville, hosted by Jeremy Willis and me, Rusty Wilson. You can find us online at journeyshepherdsville.com. For questions or comments, email podcast@journeyshepherdsville.com. Maybe we'll feature your question or comment on a future episode. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the show. So the Super Bowl is on Sunday, and we've been talking about the playoffs every episode for the last two, and so this will make 3 episodes in a row. And I want to give Jeremy a minute to gloat specifically about the last round of playoffs, but I need to gloat for a minute because I predicted week 1 that the Rams were going to make it to the Super Bowl. Week 1, I predicted, not week 1 of the NFL season, but week 1 of us talking about the playoffs. And I said, I'm afraid it's going to be Titans and Rams. And my Titans didn't even make it out of their first game. But I called the Rams making it to the Super Bowl. But Jeremy, you said you wanted to gloat. So
Yeah, I mean, I said last week, everybody picked the Chiefs. Everybody in the world was picking the Chiefs. And I said, Joe Burrow likes to play from behind. And I said, they're going to come out, they're going to get up big, which they did, 21-3. And then Joe Burrow led them back. And he's just a winner. He's just a guy that wins and you can't count him out. I mean, so yeah, I called it. And so yeah, go Bengals.
It's on recording. So we now
now
know that Jeremy
know.
was right.
Yeah.
Everybody.
He'll never live it down.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously this Sunday, biggest game of the year between the Bengals and the Rams. And so I want to know, what is everybody's prediction about who's going to win it all?
I want the Bengals to win because I do have some friends, obviously, because of proximity here, that are actually Bengals, especially Justin Reynolds. He's been a Bengals fan since we were kids. And I used to kind of like the Bengals just because they were in Cincinnati. But I just have a feeling the Rams are going to win. But I really, really want the Bengals to win. And so I'm just going to keep riding that horse and say, I'm going to go ahead and say the Bengals are going to win, even though in my heart of hearts, I think the Rams are going to win. But I want the Bengals to win.
Yeah. What about you, Penny? What do you think?
I'm the same way. I really want Cincy to really pull this off just because they kind of deserve it. It's like one of those Super Bowls when the Eagles won with their backup quarterback, right? So it's just a fun Super Bowl. I hope Cincinnati wins, but playing with the Rams, they're on, it's home advantage for them too.
It's literally the field they play on every week.
So,
yeah.
I'm hoping.
Yeah. Okay, April. I know that you really don't care, but we're going to ask anyways. What's your prediction?
I don't know. Bengals, I guess.
No, you have to pick opposite.
I can't because they're close to us. Where are the Rams out of? Like what state?
Los Angeles. They're
definitely Bengals.
The state of Los Angeles. Yeah.
They were at St. Louis at one point, though.
But before that, they were in LA.
Yeah.
So they've moved
been all
around. They get around. I actually think it's going to be, I'm going to ride this horse from week 1 to week 3. It's the Rams are going to win it all. And I hate that. I think that this is Matthew Stafford's year. If you don't know Matthew Stafford, he played like, I don't know. It seems like he spent 100 years in Detroit.
13 seasons in Detroit.
And it was just like, oh, well, he's just not that great of a quarterback, but it was really just that they weren't that great of a team around him. So I think it's going to be the Rams. But let's get into the really exciting stuff because those are the boring bets. There are all kinds of exotic prop bets that are offered every year that people will bet on. And I heard that they're expecting $6 billion to be bet on the Super Bowl
Wow.
this weekend. But I want to go over what some of these bets are and get your all's predictions. So the first prop bet is the length of the national anthem. So the person singing the national anthem is, I don't even know who this person is, Mickey Guyton. I don't know who that is.
I don't know who that is either.
And
She won the Pepsi contest.
yeah,
They're probably like some contest with
Probably
Doritos
so.
and Pepsi, and you get to sing the national anthem.
I've never heard of this person, but the over. Everybody understand how over under works? It's either over. It's going to be over this number or under this number. That's the way the bet works. Okay. So the length of the national anthem in seconds. Okay. The over is 95 and a half seconds. So more than 95 and a half seconds or under 95 and a half seconds. So that's a minute and 35. Okay. Last year, to give you a frame of reference, the national anthem went over 2 minutes long.
Who sang it last year?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
I
mean,
really,
It depends on who the singer is, too.
Yeah.
I think it should be over 3 minutes, right? Like 3 minutes is probably
3.
Yeah, it's not that long of
over.
a song.
Oh, I mean, we're talking about like if somebody puts little ad libs in there, like some Whitney Houston or something. I mean,
Or Fergie.
obviously that's
You
not
know when
happening.
Fergie did it. That was
Oh
our
my
favorite ever.
gosh.
I love the Olympic medalist that I can't remember his name. We just talked.
Carl Lewis.
Yeah, Carl Lewis. He started the song way way too high of a key, and the rock. And he goes, whoa, don't worry, I'll get it back.
But nobody really expected that to be good. Fergie is like a professional singer. And when she sang at the All-Star game, like nobody could not laugh. It was so bad.
Yeah, it was like she tried to make the national anthem really sexy.
It was like a jazz rendition.
I always
right?
wondered, how long should it take? We probably don't have this, but how long should it take to sing the national anthem?
Well, I mean, I would say that if you're not doing a lot of like trilling and ad libbing and stuff like that, I don't see over a minute 10.
Yeah.
What?
I just,
It's not a very long song.
I mean, we could sing this whole song. Let's do it right now. Everybody stand, take your hats off.
Whatever.
Oh, say.
I'm just going to look it up. Keep going on prop bets. I'm gonna look it up.
All right. Length of the national anthem. So what do you think, April? Do you think it's over or under 95 and a half seconds?
Under.
Under. Okay. Penny?
Over.
Over. Jeremy?
I'm going to go over.
All right. I'm going to go under just so that it's 2-on-2. So
Thanks, Rusty.
I mean, I actually think it'll be over, but I'm going to go
Okay.
under.
I
So.
appreciate that.
All right.
The average time of everyone that's saying this is just from Super Bowl is 1 minute and 55 seconds.
Okay.
Is the
Almost 2
average time.
minutes.
The last year was Demi Lovato.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I
Luke
do
Bryan is the most recent long one, the country guy. He sang it in 2 minutes
The
and 5
country guy?
seconds.
I like him.
I do too. The country guy.
He's just slow. That's why it took longer. Country music people
Oh.
are slow.
Whatever.
You
leave country music alone.
Oh, country music's terrible these
No,
days.
it's not.
Country music back in like the mid 90s was good. And then when you go way back, like the alternative country stuff, like the Waylon Jennings and Merle Haggard and stuff, that
The
was good.
Highwaymen.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
this modern garbage, Florida Georgia Line and
I
stuff,
love them.
they're terrible.
They are not terrible.
It's not country music. And
Whatever.
And that might be me being an old man, but it's not. It's
I'm
terrible.
older than you.
But you're not a man.
Thankfully.
Yeah.
But,
All right. Here's the next prop bet. Will the coin toss be heads or tails? I mean, there's the odds are literally 50%.
Right.
So
No, there was actually a study. This is crazy. Now I'll have to look it up and prove it. But like there was a study a couple years ago that said that the odds of it landing on tails, there's actually like a point something percent chance. And do you know why?
Because you start off on heads.
Because you start off on heads was one theory. The other theory is because like especially on like a quarter, the head, like the indentions, it weighs more on that side by the slightest amount. So it might be.
But they don't use a quarter.
No,
they use a
but that's what they're saying. Like
commemorative,
this wasn't about this.
a commemorative Jesus coin, which April would buy.
no, I would not.
The study wasn't about the Super Bowl. It was about just flipping a coin.
Gotcha.
The percentage wise that typically it would land on tails or tails up, I guess more. Anyway. But that neither here nor there.
All right. So, I mean, I'm going to go through, there's like 20 of them here, and some of them aren't very entertaining. But this one, April, this one's for you. Which song will be first performed at the halftime show? Will it be Still Dre, The Next Episode, California Love, Family Affair, or something else?
I hope it's gin and juice.
You hope it's gin and
gotta
juice.
be California Love.
I think it's California Love too.
I think they
Yeah.
end on California Love because that's a Tupac song.
Exactly,
So it'd be
that's
a
what I was
tribute
gonna
to
say.
Tupac.
And
Yeah.
it's in LA.
And it's in LA. So I think they end on California
Yeah.
Love. I think they all get on the stage and then they do California Love.
Yeah, I would
together.
agree at the end.
So okay, so this is the next bet. Will all 5 performers team up for a single song? Yes or
Yes.
no?
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
Oh, yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. How many songs will be played during the halftime show? The over is 9.5, and the under is 9.
They only have like 14 minutes though. I don't know how you fit 9.5 songs.
well, they do a medley.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they do.
They do like a verse or
Over.
a
I'm
chorus.
going over.
You think they're going to do more than 9.5?
Oh,
Wow,
no, I'm thinking under.
I think under 2. Right.
Whatever.
All right. Let's see. What color will the liquid poured on the winning head coach be? What color? Will it be lime green / yellow, clear or water, red / pink, blue, orange, or purple?
So if the Rams win, it's going to be blue. And if the Bengals win, it's going to be orange.
Ooh, that's some good logic there.
Mm-hmm.
Just so we can all remember, there are people putting money.
I know.
So
on
can I
this.
tell you about my
goodness.
favorite prop bet ever? It actually happened last year. It's a true story. You can look it up. A guy bet $50,000 as a prop bet that someone would run onto the field during the Super Bowl. He ran onto the field in there in the Super Bowl, got arrested. It was a misdemeanor charge and a $1,500 fine. He ended up cashing it in for $370,000.
I wanna do
So
that.
he
Yeah.
placed the bet for $50,000 that someone would run onto the field and end up coming out with. I was like, that's genius.
Yeah,
Like,
that
because-
is.
He should be the
'cause, like,
president of the United States.
He had
I
a
mean, that's
misdemeanor
just-
and a $50 fine, but you're clearing over $300 and something $1,000. Just I thought that was awesome.
That's incredible. All right. Well, we'll follow up next time around. I don't remember who said what, but the great news is this is on recording, so I can go back through and any of them I got wrong, I can just edit out my voice and put the correct one in.
But it'll land before then, though, right?
Yeah, but unless somebody like downloads it and holds on to it, which let's be honest, nobody's doing that. All right. So in WTF news, which is going to be a new segment that we do maybe never again, but we're going to do it today. This is from The Mirror, which is a British news service, but this is the headline. Brace yourselves. Man has more than 200 human bones in his house, including a wall covered in spines. Okay. So, whatever you might think this is, it's probably not what you think it is. But I don't know. For first reactions, just at the headline before we get into what the story is.
I'm going to say he's orthopedic surgeon, maybe. I don't know.
Okay, good guess. Good guess. What about you, Penny?
Where did he get them?
That's a great question. Not yeah,
Good one.
Okay, so this is the deal. So there's this. He's 20 years old, and honestly, looking at the picture of them, I would say that he probably it's a they. That's their pronoun. But student John Pichaya, he has been purchasing bones to sell for educational purposes.
Oh, I was somewhat right.
So he says in the article, and we can link this in the show notes, that that he what?
But don't click on it. So I gotta say something real quick before we finish this. These articles that Rusty sends, I click on the link, and I'm like, I just got a virus because these are like the glitchiest. I looked it up to look at the picture. There is no legit on my iPhone. Been 15 ads pop up since I clicked on this,
And they're all about prop bets, so they can hear what we're saying. Yeah, so you can click on it. It's not just the Mirror, but
the second one's worse. Wait till I'll show them what happens when I click on the second article.
That's because that website is, I mean, I use that website all the time, but they are ad heavy. So we've got this guy who he has in the picture, you got to see the pictures. He literally has a room of just spines. And these are real human spines.
I think that's cool.
Well, I actually have a friend that I'm going to call her out, Sam Lucero. I sent this to her and I was like, this sounds like how you decorate your house. And she did say that she was going to get some ideas from it. But so he sells these to colleges and to orthopedic surgeons and people for educational services. My question is, where is he getting this?
Yeah, that's a good
here's
question.
my theory. All right. It's a little off the wall, so go with me. When you look at the picture of the guy, if your computer makes it past all the viruses, there's a picture of this guy. Like, he looks to me like a vampire.
Oh, yeah.
I think he's like 3,000 years old, but he's like a vampire, so he stays looking young. And so I think these are all like his victims of people that he's killed to stay alive.
I'm gonna give him a voice. Hello, I'm vampire. Can I?
But doesn't he look like a vampire? Like if you were gonna
His turtleneck is
if you were
pretty-
going to cast somebody in a movie to play like a vampire, like a modern day, like this is the guy that you would cast.
Yeah, I
as
agree.
My
the
wardrobe
vampire.
is Steve Jobs chic
Where is he at again?
in New York City,
Oh, okay.
and
Yeah.
these are his victims. He says that he buys the bones from individual sellers, which is even more concerning.
Right. Off the street.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
You know, like there's a guy on the street with a trench coat and he opens it up. He's like, "Hey, looking for bones?"
Yeah, I mean it's definitely weird. It's
Yeah.
but when you look at the picture of the dude, you're like, yeah, I could see that guy having a room full of bones in his house.
But I mean, so is this unethical? Like, do you all think this is unethical? The buying and selling of
I think it
human
depends
bones?
on how you got the bones. Like that would be the very first thing. Like
for sure.
How like if it's people that because people that can donate their bodies to science, and then I don't know if you ever saw it. I went and saw it. It was crazy when they did the human bodies thing.
Yeah,
that was
They
really
do.
cool.
At the Science
That's
Center?
all prisoners from a Chinese prison that died, and like I mean these people just signed over their bodies. So that's like okay, that's kind of I don't want to say it's cool, but like it's whatever. The bodies were given for this purpose.
Hello, President of China. Do you have bones?
Was it the human body? Was it at the Science Center, though?
They had it at the Science Center.
Okay, that's what I thought. So,
I think
yeah.
that's
It's a
the
traveling.
one.
It's a traveling exhibit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep, really cool.
So I think it just depends on how the bones were taken. I mean, I wouldn't do it. It just is weird. Like it just, I actually do have a human skull. I have a lot of skulls, but we've talked about that before.
I
actually
hope
did
you
it.
have a skull.
I did at one point have an actual human skull. But at some point along the way, I lost it. I have a friend that was a doctor.
Wait. You lost a human skull?
Yeah.
Like, how does that happen?
So it was
That's unethical.
It was a friend of mine whose dad is a doctor, and so they get those, and so he
Here,
Yeah.
doctor, you've made it 10 years.
Yeah.
Here's your
No,
honorary
I don't think he
human
got
skull.
it like for like an award. He just had one, and I just thought it was really cool, and so I asked if I could have it, and he said yeah. And then I've moved like 5 times, and at some point, like the skull just disappeared.
He threw it in the garbage.
Oh, that poor
Somebody
person.
has definitely called the coroner after moving into one of your
Oh,
homes.
for sure.
Very just
tell,
like a
tell the story about when you had to call the coroner here at the church.
Oh yeah, we had a cooler that so what happened is there was this smell coming from the back parking lot, and there used to be a burnt down building back there, so it was behind that building. I mean, and that looked like if I'm going to murder somebody, that's where I'm murdering somebody.
100%, yes.
Now it's not there, so it's just a parking lot. But anyway, so one day we were out there, or Scully was out there, who was our student minister at the time, and this smell just kept getting worse and worse. So we just assumed like an animal had died back there, and that takes some time, but it just kept getting worse and worse. So there is a cooler back there, like a big Coleman cooler or whatever, igloo cooler. I don't know what brand it was. And so he goes back there and he finds this cooler. And so he kicks it over. And when he kicks it over, all of this blood and like guts and everything like just comes out of the cooler. And there were like bags of like bones and like organs. And I'm not kidding. Like one of the bones that came out, obviously the smell was like still to this day, like when I tell the story, like I can still smell the smell that it was death. I mean, the death has a smell, and it looked like a human like femur bone. And so, I mean, the first thing we thought was, oh my gosh, this is a body. Like somebody has killed somebody and took it out. So we had to call the police. They had to call the coroner. Coroner was out somewhere, so it's like 2 hours. So we're just all kind of like freaking out, like what's going on. Ends up it was a deer, and somebody I guess had processed the deer and didn't know what to do with it, so they just like dropped the cooler off behind the church. But yeah, it was for a moment. There was a good period of time we were like, oh my gosh, this is an actual like we found a body. Yeah.
That would be par for the course for this place, to be really honest with you.
Yeah, I would.
I mean, not that I wish that somebody was dead, but that would make the story that much better.
Yeah.
And if it turns out that it was Jeremy.
Yeah.
Jeremy is
The murderer.
he's like
Oh,
Dexter.
my.
Yeah.
He's got a code.
No,
only kill
Dexter
bad
would
guys,
never do
though.
that.
That's right. So I don't know. I mean, I was going to ask, like, is this respectful of the body? Like, is that a, like, would you be offended, April, to find out that somebody had your skull in their
No.
china cabinet or something?
No, I mean, not if
Okay.
it's for educational stuff. I mean, maybe in a china cabinet, but I don't know. I think medical stuff is fascinating. So if they were using it to learn, then
I agree. Like, so like if somebody would put April, like her skeleton on display because they were like infatuated with that person, like that's just way too, but like I do agree. Like if something was wrong with my body, like something happens and I could donate my body to help someone else later down the road, then I don't have a problem with that. And it sounds like, even though I'm pretty sure this guy's like black market, like a vampire, but like if you're doing it for reasons to help people, then I don't know.
Yep.
Once I'm dead, I don't care what happens to my
It's
body.
too much though. That guy had way too much.
Well, I mean the Wall of Spines. I mean, which sounds like a really terrible metal band, Wall of Spines. But that's I don't know. He's never going to find love. I just don't think it. I don't think it's in the cards for him. All right. Well, the next story that we're going to talk about is, and the website is IFL Science, which is we've used this website many a times. I freaking love science, except it's not freaking. It's the
This one you're guaranteed to get a virus though.
yeah, probably.
Like watch this when I pull it up.
Oh yeah, there's lots of ads.
Yeah. Well, they got to pay for it.
Like
somehow.
I have to accept it just to even get on here.
Yeah, you accept the cookies.
And learn how to make chili in 20 minutes. Chili in 20 minutes, Peacock, Saturday Night Live, a diamond ring, Reebok shoes have all popped up on my phone since I opened this. And now a dying dog. Look, there's literally...
You're welcome. All right. So the headline is medical mystery after antibiotics make man, quote, hear God. A man ended up hearing God in a rare reaction to his antibiotic medication. His doctors have reported in the journal BMC Psychiatry. The 50-year-old man attended a hospital appointment with a consultant for pneumonia where he was prescribed amoxicillin. I can't pronounce all this. An antibiotic. It was a common one. Put that down. I don't know what you're looking at, but I'm reading the story here. And it was used to treat a bacterial infection, and he was discharged. And when the respiratory symptoms did not disappear, he was brought back to the hospital and started on another antibiotic, which this kind of sounds like it's clarithromycin,
Yep.
which
Mycin,
kind of sounds like clairvoyancy or whatever. So 2 days after the second antibiotic prescription, his family members noticed a progressive change in his behavior with unusual logorrhea, a tendency to talk a great detail. Anybody else catch that? That sounds like diarrhea.
Yeah, I was like,
Logorrhea.
okay,
Like,
well, antibiotics do that.
Yeah, like diarrhea of the mouth. It's actually logorrhea. Logorrhea, irritability, increased physical activity, elevated mood, and ideas of being in contact with God. The patient, who had no history of psychiatric illness, drug taking, or alcohol abuse, and had never taken antibiotics before, reported to the doctors that on the first night of the course of his antibiotics, he felt like he was dying and began having auditory hallucinations in which he was, quote, hearing God who was talking to him and saying he was chosen for a special mission. Now,
Gosh.
so this is how cults begin with antibiotics.
My favorite comment, the first comment on this, it says, by any chance, if he watched Blues Brothers recently.
That's hilarious.
So if you've watched Blues Brothers, you'll get that.
Yeah.
Nobody else will.
So the kind of the way the story plays out is the guy is aware that these are hallucinations. Like he's not convinced that he's actually hearing from God. But I think that this raises a really good question about like the brain's impact or our ability or our biological ability to have like a spiritual experience. And so we're going to ask Jeremy about this because like there's more and more study out there that shows that that's me crinkling paper, that our brains are actually could be responsible for our religious experiences. And so the question that I want to ask you, Jeremy, is could our spiritual experiences, the feeling the presence of the Holy Spirit or any of that, could that be our brain's biological response to stimuli? And if that is the case, is that part of like created design or an evolutionary adaptation, or does it even matter? So let's hear.
What does Jeremy think?
So when I started studying this, because you sent this out, and I'd already been fascinated with this kind of stuff before. I mean, I've talked about the brain a lot from sermons and even on the podcast. Like like what our brains are capable of doing to me fascinates me all the time. And just, we don't tap into only a small percentage of what our brains are actually capable of. But what I think is absolutely, I do think that our brains can trick us in religious. I mean, we talk about even like emotional manipulation and stuff like that. And obviously there's like things out there where you can plant seeds in people's minds and then like ask them a question later and they'll tell you the answer. I mean, there's all kinds of crazy things that can be done to trick us that people just don't think about or want to talk about because we don't think about how we're manipulated all the time to believe and do certain things. So I do think that it is possible that some of our religious experiences could be tricks, could be things in our brains that are being activated either by a stimuli of some sorts or an environment. I mean, we all know that, like, for example, if you go to a certain environment, like a place you're familiar with, and you get a certain smell or like, it takes you back there and you can imagine things that don't actually exist in that moment, but you're taken back there. You know, I mean, like there's a certain, I don't even know what it was. There was a certain potpourri that I think it's the right potpourri, whatever you say it, that my grandma used to have in her house. And I walked into somebody's house. I mean, this was a couple of years ago, and I couldn't tell you what the smell, but it was the exact same smell. And it was almost like my brain, like I felt like I was seeing her house. Like, you know, like I wasn't, but I was. Does that make sense? And so it's just fascinating, all of that stuff. So I do think that is. Now, I think the trickier question comes, is that by design? Is that actually something that is used by God? And I think it's possible that it is used by God to connect us to him and that type of thing, and to help us with our experiences here as human beings. Or, I mean, and I'm not smart enough to completely debate this one way or the other. Is it just a byproduct of evolutionary experience? And I think they do bring up some good questions when I was looking at some of the articles and kind of studying some of this stuff. So this is going to be, what does Jeremy think? I don't know. I do have some thoughts about it. You know, like I said, I think we can see stuff and hear stuff that isn't really there all the time. We can trick ourselves all the time. And we probably all, even around this table, have done it at some point, tricked ourselves into believing something or been tricked by somebody. You know, even things like hypnotism, you know, like I actually can't be hypnotized. I want to be. But some people just aren't susceptible to it. And some people are.
If you were hypnotized, I would tell whoever's doing it, like, you've got to put a suggestion in his brain that when he hears a certain sound, and it would probably be that sound that you're so frustrated with on Sundays with that scraping of the microphone.
Yeah.
When you hear him do that, he starts to act like a baby.
Yeah.
And that would be amazing on stage on Sunday morning. Jeremy hears that sound and just starts acting like an infant.
I went like to a hypnotist one time, not like paid, but like a show where they were doing and the guy that was with me like swears that he got hypnotized. And I just, the whole time, like, I was just like, this is not working.
You're too cynical.
Yeah, it might be too cynical, but you know, there's been studies about that you can be hypnotized and susceptible to it, and like certain parts of your brain. I read an article years ago. I tried to pull it up, but I couldn't find it, about, there was a guy that they did some, you know, they can probe different parts of your brain and send electricity to different parts of your brain and activate different parts of your brain. And, you know, it's just fascinating. They made this guy believe he was a giraffe. Like that he literally thought he for a period of time, like he saw the world as a giraffe would see the world. And like, you can see it. Like, I mean, they're just watching this guy, but they have somehow done something to him to make him think that. I mean, there's been stuff they've done where they can activate parts of your brain, and you're eating a carrot and you would swear that you're eating a Snickers bar.
Oh,
you know,
love that.
like, I mean, you know, yeah, that would be awesome.
That would be the best thing ever.
Like, all that to say, like, there are some crazy things that can happen with our brains. And so I do think sometimes we have to be careful with the religious experiences. Is that part of it? You know, this one's an interesting one. Like, he took these drugs and stuff and he heard from God. And, you know, anybody that's used drugs in the past, we can't promote drugs, obviously, but anybody that's used drugs in the past, like, I mean, I remember, and everybody knows this is part of my story. Like, I did used to use drugs, and like, I remember having moments where I felt like I was hearing from something, you know, and like, I don't know if it was God or what, but, you know, I do think that happens. And I think that's something we have to be aware of. And I think people just want to dismiss that immediately and be like, oh, it's the liberals and the scientists trying to say, you know, but I do think we can trick ourselves. I mean, you know, and I think the part that I want to include in you guys, because I think this is the bigger part for me of this conversation, is sometimes, because this is one of my big pet peeves with the God conversation of God speaking to us, regardless of whether it's built into our brains, through creation or through evolution, which is a good thing to look into. When people tell me that God told me to do that, I'm like, how do you argue with that? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think that some people use that almost as like a cop out that like, oh, God told me, like I heard from God and God said to do this. And I'm always like, or are you just saying that because you know that I can't tell you that no, God? I mean, I remember specifically when I was interviewing for a church a long time ago, and the guy came and he was pursuing us to work there. And Jamie will tell you the same story. It was pretty interesting. He offered us the job, and we said we need to pray about it and think about it. And so we did. We literally went like last week with Rusty. We're like, I'll pray for it, and then we just don't. Like we actually did. We spent some time praying about it and just talking through it that night. And we were like, this just isn't right for us and our family at this time. And the guy called me the next day and he was like, so what do you think? And I was like, well, we just really don't feel like this is the right move. And he's like, well, I prayed too. And God told me that you're supposed to come. And I was like, so God, like what are we talking? Like God told you that. So how am I supposed to argue with that? And then the other side of that is, to me, it's interesting sometimes when people say that like God told them or they heard from God. It's interesting that it's always the things that they wanted to do anyway, but now all of a sudden God told them to do it. And so I think that's even like the side of me is that there's these oddities of people that literally think they hear from God. And the other thing about hearing from God's voice is that in the Bible, at least, it's always like a scary thing. Like it's always like I don't know if you'd want to tell people you heard from God because it's this weird thing. But yeah, I think that's the bigger thing for me is that people can be manipulated. And I think people manipulate other people by using this like idea of like, God told me and God spoke to me and God did this. And, to me, that is, Rusty called me cynical. I am. I mean, sometimes that stuff I'm like, I don't know. And so are we tricking ourselves? Or,
it takes a cynic to know a cynic.
Yeah.
For sure.
I do think that's one of those things where it's like, I don't know. I don't know if we're tricking ourselves. I'd love to hear your all's thoughts about that, but are we tricking ourselves sometimes? And even as a church, are we emotionally manipulating people sometimes with music and environments and light? I mean, you go to some churches, I mean, and I'm not saying this is bad, but between the lights, the lasers, the smoke, I mean, you can do a lot of stuff to really manipulate somebody's emotions or make them think that was a God experience when really it was like they just had a $20,000 light and sound system, So I don't know. I do wrestle with that stuff, but.
Well, what are your guys' thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I would say you can be manipulated. I know, obviously, as the connections coordinator here, when I call like visitors and get their feedback, I remember a conversation with someone and she goes, well, I don't understand why, your pastor doesn't have music playing in an altar call. And I was like, okay, well, let me ask Jeremy that because I think I was doing this as a volunteer at the time. And then you think about that, like any church you go to, like altar call, they start with and I think that can be a manipulation. And so I said, well, Jeremy just really wants to have that conversation with you one-on-one to kind of talk more about it. Like you don't have to have music in the background, but we get taught that you do, that's the norm. So anyway.
Yeah.
I don't, from a music standpoint though, if you really think about it, a lot of people will say, the music was speaking to me. I could hear God through that music, or I could find my thoughts and what I wanted to say through that music. So that's not really manipulation, but really in this particular.
No, I don't think it's always negative. I'm not even arguing against the churches that do like intentionally go into it. I'm not saying God can't still work through that stuff.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense? It's to me that more of the idea of just our awareness, like, for example, like I think in the article or one of the articles I read kind of when I knew we were going to talk about this was, the correlation between we often feel like we hear from God when we're going through hard things and bad things. We often don't feel like we're hearing from God as much when we're going through good things. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Like we're grateful and we like praise God because our life is good. But like the people that say they hear from God or have these religious experiences, are we preconditioned through wording and language and stuff to believe that God's there with us? And I'm not saying he's not. It's just an interesting idea. And again, I'm not saying that God doesn't use that and that wasn't created into us to keep us connected to him. That when you go through those hard times, these parts of your brain activate. It's just, to me, it's that fascinating thing. I mean, there was one guy I listened to that literally, I mean, you guys probably know this, but they can map out your brain and they can tell what parts of your brains are being activated during certain thoughts and ideas. And there's all kinds of articles about the God spot in your brain. Yep. And essentially these religious experiences are all coming from like one similar spot. And so that's what's fascinating to me was that, and people that are not religious, that spot doesn't activate as much as people that are religious. And so was that a preconditioned thing, or is that like, and I don't know. I'm like I said, I'm not smart enough to break down the data. I mean, it is interesting to me. And again, like I said, I do think that, I think that God can speak to us in different ways. But I think it's just that awareness of sometimes are we saying things we don't really know what we're talking about? Maybe is a way to think about it a little bit more.
Yeah.
So.
Right.
Well, the kind of the closest thing that I can relate to with this is when my wife and I were looking at going onto the mission field. I can't say that we didn't want to go, but it didn't seem feasible to us. And so we did. We spent a ton of time in prayer about it, and we kind of went through this. We developed, and we got this from somewhere. I just don't remember where. We just were kind of like, okay, well, let's look for red lights and green lights, and not like, oh, we're driving, we saw it. Like, okay, so I just don't think this is feasible. And then this thing that needed to happen in order for it to be feasible was like, oh, okay, well, we've been praying that we would have, a peace about it, or that like it would be made clear to us through whatever. And so we just kind of kept seeing, I guess and it wasn't that we were always looking for them, but things just happened to continue to work out in a way that was leading us. And so it was not like, I wouldn't say, well, God told us to go to the mission field. I would say, well, we prayed about it and it worked. It seemed to work out that we got there, and we were being obedient to the best of our abilities. Yep. But I think that some people over spiritualize everything. Well,
and I think, to that point of like, maybe kind of wrap all this up, or at least an idea. One of my favorite books is called Finding God in the Waves. It's by Science Mike, who's, I know you're familiar with. I don't know if everybody else is, but he has a podcast and all that stuff. But he went through a phase of his life where he's a science guy. Like everything's got to be filtered through the world of science. And in his book, he talks about he's going through this thing where he doesn't believe in God. He's talking about the stuff we're talking about, that he knows that our brains can manipulate in certain ways to make us believe things or think we see things or whatever. And he talks about, he gets invited to this event by this speaker, Rob Bell, who we've talked about before. And at the end of the event, that Rob Bell gives everybody communion. They go up and they take communion. And he's in this phase of his life where he doesn't believe any of this. Like, he just thinks, I'm going up and I'm getting a cracker and juice. And like in his book, he talks about like this idea that like he knows that he's in some ways being manipulated by the words that were just spoken, by even this act of going up and taking communion. And he says when he takes the communion, he talks about like just something happened. And he's like, I know that I can explain what happened, but it was real. Like, and then he talks about that he goes out and he's conflicted because he's a man of science, but he's had this religious experience and he can't get this out of his head. So he like just goes and he's standing in the waves. That's why the book's called Finding God in the Waves. And he's looking in the waves in the Pacific Ocean. And he's like, I know in my heart of hearts, I can explain all of this, but it's real, and it was like this kind of moment where like, he's trying to fight it, but he's still, and so that's why I said, I don't know if that's designed within us, that even as we're trying to fight it, that God's still speaking through us through these things. But, I think it's something we have to be careful of and aware of. And I do think that there are people, and I'll say this honestly, that use these tactics to hurt people, and do manipulate people. And I said, I don't think that, I think that God can speak through music. And here's the end of the day, we're going to play songs at Easter. They're going to make you cry, and make you, those are tools we can use. It's just being aware of that is a real part of the conversation, I think.
You're going to play I Can Only Imagine for people on Easter.
With some maybe some sign language too. Which is
somebody
really dramatic.
Like interpretive dance.
Why are you picking on I Can Only Imagine? I loved that song.
I mean, I was thinking more when I slaughtered the lamb that a lot of people will be crying.
No, he's coming out of tune.
Don't get him started.
Hey, April, don't give away any Easter secrets.
I'm giving them all away.
All right. Well, that was...
That's what Jeremy thought.
But also...
did I really think that though? Or was
you were
evolutionarily?
Yeah, that's right. We will never know. So we got some things coming up here at Journey that we want to tell you about before we get into our final topic. So this Saturday, that is the 12th of February, 2022, if you have a preschool child, our children's ministry is doing a Be My Valentine, BEE, My Valentine cookie decorating thing. So if that's something you're interested in, you can check that out on the app. This Sunday, if you're thinking about getting baptized or you've kicked that idea around, we are doing a baptism Sunday this week, the 13th of February. And so if you are interested in that, you can send us a message or a text or carrier pigeon or whatever. If you have a student in our student ministries, the 4th through the 6th of March, there's a winter retreat. If you want more information about that, reach out to Spencer Connor, our student minister, and he will help you out with that. For anything else that you need to know about the church, you can go to your app store and download the Journey app. It's the best way to stay connected with everything we have going on here. And we don't pass plates at Journey, so it's if you're inclined to give to the church, that is the best way to do it. It's free and it's safe. So, okay, so. The thing that I want to talk about today, which I'm going to imagine that most of us in this room are going to fall on the same page, but some of our listeners may not. And that is the topic it's got a lot of steam behind it right now. And I want to just kind of talk about why we think that is. But it's this idea of banning books in school systems. So it has been... within the last year, we're starting to see it more and more of parents and educators and administrators banning certain books or calling for certain books to be banned because they are inappropriate or teach something that some people don't think should be taught. And kind of where the thing right now is there is a graphic novel that came out, I want to say in the late 80s, maybe the mid 90s. I can't remember. It's a graphic novel is it's a fancy word for comic book.
Yeah.
But it's called Maus, M-A-U-S. And it's essentially the Holocaust, the story of the Holocaust, but with mice. And so anthropomorphized mice. So, the reason that the parents are clamoring, and this is in a specific district in Tennessee, to have that banned is because there is anthropomorphized mouse nudity. I'm not kidding.
Oh my
I'm not
gosh.
kidding. That this is so there's anthropomorphized mouse nudity and the usage of the cuss word damn. And so, you know, I looked at a list of books that have been attempted to be banned in the United States school systems. Some successfully were. So here's a list. The Great Gatsby, The Catcher in the Rye, The Grapes of Wrath, To Kill a Mockingbird, The Color Purple, Ulysses, Beloved, The Lord of the Flies, 1984. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And so kind of the question that I want to talk about with the group is like, is it feasible to ban a book in our digital age? I mean, you can access these anywhere at any time. So it's not in the kids' school library. What is that even like a reasonable thing? Penny, you're a teacher, so you probably have some insight on this that maybe the rest of us don't.
Oh, this burns me up. I hate to see this. I don't know much about this particular graphic novel. I don't have a problem with it. I think that books are important to have both. I'm just going to teacher term here, to be both a mirror and windows, because we need to see people like us, but also be able to understand other people who are not like us.
Yep.
And that has to reach across all of our history. And I think we're living in a time right now where we're trying to control like what type of history we want our children to know about and what we don't want them to know about. And that just seems unfair because we can't learn from anything other than the history that we had, right? So we can't learn to be better people. We can't learn to be a better civilization without learning from the past first.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, I think too, like, I mean, one of the things, like my wife was a teacher for years, and there was a book, I can't remember what it was, but there was a book years ago. She was a teacher and she got in a lot of trouble. I mean, and I say a lot of trouble, she didn't from schools, but a lot of parents were writing in. There was actually a group of Christians. And so my wife's, you guys know my wife. So there was a book that she had the students read. She was a freshman English teacher. And in that book, there was some cuss words and there was some stuff that this character did that was, not good. And the problem was all these parents like got all uproar about this character. And, my wife was like, but he's the antagonist. like the writer is trying to show you that what he's doing is not okay. And so the writer is using these bad things, but they're like, it's clearly this is the bad guy. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, this is not acceptable behavior. And she was just amazed that like the parents couldn't see that like through that stuff, there was actually teaching a lesson in the book about why this guy's choices had led him to be who anyway. But it was just like, they didn't even want to talk about that. Like all they knew was there was a cuss word, you know, and they didn't want to talk about the context of it, that like, yeah, he said this, but that writer is trying to show why that's a bad thing. Does that make sense?
Right.
And like,
yeah, totally.
It was just like they just wanted to jump all over it. You know, I mean, we had to ban a book recently. It was called Redeeming Love.
Shut up! Oh my god!
It was way too graphic.
Whatever.
Practically pornographic.
Whatever.
You should have saw that coming.
I should have. I didn't know.
It's on our list of banned books. Here.
We're actually going to set up a bonfire and
We're going to burn
all of them.
burn
I'm not talking to you
all of them. It would take 6 hours to burn one. It's like 500 pages long.
Whatever.
That's true.
It's a great book.
I mean, I think with books though, it's important really that teachers need to know what's in those books before they're given out, especially in, elementary age. I wouldn't necessarily just give a kid that graphic novel unless they were mature enough to understand what was happening in it or it was relevant. So,
and I think if the teacher was to send a note home that says, hey, this book may be controversial. Like, here's why we're reading it. That might help too. And I don't really know how the public schools work with that because mine have been homeschooled, but.
Well, and here's the thing. And I think, and this is, this should not be controversial to say that, like, the things that a lot of people are upset about in the case of Mouse is that there's Nazis, right? And there's like, we should all be able to agree that Nazism is bad.
Right. Well, yeah.
Like there should not be any question that Nazism and racism are inherently bad things.
Absolutely.
Well, and I think the other thing about this, and I didn't read it, so I could be wrong, but I think it's the big argument. It's one thing if it was required reading, or if it's in the library and they have access to it. You know what I'm saying? I think like people on Twitter get all upset about like, somebody tweeted something. I'm like, you don't have to unfollow them.
Right.
You don't have to hear what they have to say. Like, it's not like Twitter's like, you have to see this tweet today. So that's another thing about it is like with books, like is it required, like in this, is it required reading or is it just like the book is there and people are losing their minds? Because I think that's two different conversations. You have a choice whether you want to, like we talk about the Super Bowl show. There are people that are upset because of Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg's pasts and all this stuff for them. Like it's this family event, I could care less. I like Eminem and Kendrick Lamar both. But like,
you don't like Snoop?
He's overrated.
No, he's not.
Yes, he is.
Thank you, Penny.
I want him to show up as Snoop Lion.
Anyway.
I really like the Snoop Lion.
But here's my point of why I'm going. You don't have to watch it.
Exactly.
Like, don't just there's other choice. You can turn it off during that 15 minutes. And so, that's the other side of it is all these things people are getting upset about. It's one thing if it's mandatory, if it's required. It's another thing, does it just exist and you just don't like that it exists? There's a million things in the world we don't like that exist, and just, I think that's the other side of it is people just getting all bent out of shape because something exists.
But I'm going to challenge that just a little bit. Like, even if it is required reading, like, Penny made a good point about books need to be windows and mirrors. There are things that I think we need to, especially from history, that we need to look at them and we need to read them and we need to be aware that these things happen. There is this attempt to sort of revision, like how's that say? History revision. Yeah. Where, and I think, that's a major problem that there are people that just
I agree with that. I guess with this particular instance, I'm like, okay, I don't know anything about this. But to me, the whole thing sounds kind of gimmicky anyway, that you're taking mice to explain. Like the Holocaust is real. It was one of the worst things that ever happened in human history.
So it was written by a Jewish guy.
Well, that's the thing that kind of, that changed. Again, you should have said, I think the Holocaust needs to be talked about, but there's also a lot of books like The Diary of Anne Frank, or you've got a million other things that it's not about revisionist history for me. It's more of that idea of, was really a graphic novel that's been the best way to do that. To me, that might also be whoever picked that book, if it was required reading, might be like, everybody's got an agenda.
Yeah,
You know, some
absolutely.
people also,
Yeah.
that's the other side of this, is some people do stuff controversial just
Yep.
to get this kind of stuff going.
Yeah.
And that's not helpful either. But no, I agree with you. I don't think we should we shouldn't avoid topics because they're hard.
Sure.
We also have to be wise in how we bring those up.
Well,
And so was this the best way to bring up and have kids study the Holocaust? And that's the part I don't know because I haven't read it or know anything about it.
and do we need to see mouse genitalia? I just don't know.
Okay, that's too much. But who bans books? Like who does that?
School boards.
The school. So it's the district level. Okay.
Parents complain and school boards make that decision.
So is this banned somewhere near us? I'm
In
confused.
Tennessee, yes,
Tennessee,
there's a
okay.
district in Tennessee, East Tennessee, I do believe.
There's a lot of things banned in East Tennessee.
Yeah, that's true. Snake handling is not, interestingly enough. No offense to all of our Eastern Tennessee listeners, if we have any. So, but here's another question. Let's flip this on its head a little bit. Are there books that should be banned? Like, for example, like
Redeeming Love. Yeah.
yes,
Shut up. It is a great book.
I don't know if there's books that should be banned.
I agree.
There's a lot of books that shouldn't have never been published. I'll tell you that. And there's a lot of Christian books that have never been published.
like the whole Amish
the
romance
whole Left
novels.
Behind series. We could have done without that whole thing because that set us back a lot of years and stupid people. But no offense if you like those books, but they're
love
they're
them.
not connected to the Bible.
They're very
at all.
inaccurate.
But anyway, but I do think there's a lot of stuff that I wouldn't have published it. But should it be banned? No, I don't know.
Well, I'm like the Anarchist Cookbook. So I know that people a lot of times want to throw that one out, which is if you don't know what the Anarchist Cookbook is, it's a book. It exists that teaches you how to do things like build bombs and stuff like that. And so oftentimes when you've had one of these mass shooters or things like that, there is often one of these Anarchist Cookbook in their possessions type thing.
I would still say no. You don't ban it.
Yeah. Or like,
I don't know if you have
Mein
to
Kampf.
ban it or you just don't make it. Publishers have a choice.
Sure.
Now you can
Right.
self-publish a lot of things right now, but then Amazon, a lot of people self-publish through Amazon. Amazon can choose as a company whether they want to do that or not. So again, that all to me comes down to choices and things. I mean, again, like I know about that. I haven't read that book, but I know about it. And I'm like, I'm never going to have a copy. I'm never going to buy a copy. I mean, so make it hard to find for people. I mean, should it be banned? I don't know. But I mean, and I know that's the follow-up, but I mean, we have to be careful with this because there are parts of the world where they ban the Bible and want to ban the Bible. And the Bible has a lot of stuff in it. Honestly, when you read it and you're not reading it in context, there's a lot of statements in the Bible that like maybe should, I mean, if you're using the same criteria for why I'm banning this book, the Bible would fit in some of those same criteria.
Which is,
to be honest with you,
I have it written down here. Couldn't the Bible be banned based on some of the same arguments? And I absolutely.
I mean, if you just took the statements that God told them to go kill all the men, women, and children, okay, name a book where God's telling. Now, obviously, if we sit down and we talk about that, and we're like, "That's in the Bible." Yeah, it's in the Bible.
But if you want to know more about that, come to the What Is class.
Yeah, and we'll explain it more a little bit better. But I mean, even this week, I just goofing her off, like I read that Ezekiel verse for you guys and all that stuff. I mean, there's just some messed up stuff in the Bible, and not just messed up. There's like some stuff, especially in the Old Testament and some in the New Testament as well, that if you're using this as the criteria for why we can't do this, the cancel culture, then that same thing is going to apply to the Bible. And I think that's where you have to be careful with it, is that there's a lot of, the Bible is a collection of books. It's an ancient book. It comes out of the Middle East. It comes out of a certain time and a certain world when a lot of crazy things are going on. And a lot of the things that are written are in responses to some of those things going on. And because it's an ancient book, our understanding of the world and God and how we relate to him was very different back then. And so there's a lot of really messed up stuff in the Bible. And so, again, I think that's where you have to be careful of making those judgment statements, Yeah.
I agree.
And God bless our educators and our administrators and just trying to do their best with these kids. There's no amount of money you could pay me right now to be a teacher. There's just not.
No.
It's such a like a powder keg constantly. And I mean, I know that some of these school board meetings are almost comical with the arguments that people get up and make. And Jeremy sent me a Twitter thing that it's a pastor's wife, and she gets up there and she reads this, I guess it's an excerpt from some book, and it's like, okay, like that's what you're That's what you're there to do, huh? So I don't know.
I mean, we're sitting here talking about books being banned. There's a guy in New York that has 200 spines.
That's
his
right.
living room. I mean,
Gross.
That's right.
What are you know, if we're letting that guy live his life, you know, and sell his bones to Dr. Ocula, then, you know, we got, you know.
Yeah, because I think when you look at books, though, I mean, a book can be good in one hand and bad in the other, depending on who it's in. So, yeah, a lot of your mass shooters might have that particular book, but then there might be a lot of other people that have it that are just curious to know how things are made.
The Crusades, they justified it based on biblical text.
Right.
So, I mean, there are mass shootings that happened that guys said they did it because of things they got from
Absolutely.
the Bible.
God told them to.
That's what I'm
God
saying.
told them, I mean, we're bringing full circle. God told them to. I mean, there's been, you know, I think I'm wanting to say the Pulse nightclub, that when that got shut up at the gay club in Orlando, the guy said that it was because of God, that God, you know, I mean, you know, judgment on these people and what, doesn't matter whether you agree with their lifestyle or not, or what the Bible maybe says about that. But like, there's no way but that he got it from the Bible in his mind. And so that's just where, again, now, you know, we're going to people be upset and be like, well, this book exists and it's the worst thing. Yeah. Okay. Don't read it.
Exactly.
Don't buy it. Don't, you know.
That's what I think. Just don't buy it.
I just think that we cannot say this about books when we have the internet. I'm sorry.
Right.
Like, you can find everything on the internet. So why even discuss even taking away books from kids? I mean, it just seems really, really silly.
Well, and if a kid really wants that, even if you ban that book, you're telling me the kid can't get a hold of it somehow on Kindle or on
YouTube or something.
I mean,
well, and my guess is, I know if I were a kid, I'm not allowed to read this book. Guess what book I'm going to
Exactly.
Now
Go
I want to
Google
know
it.
why.
I was going to say the same thing, Rusty. Exactly.
I'm going to go get the Naked Mouse book because that's what I want to do with
Is
my
Lorelai
time.
going to read that this week?
Yes, we've already read it. She's got it memorized. It's a children's copy though.
But I do think like
blurries.
I do think one thing you brought up, it does make a difference too. Like, again, it goes back to what Jamie experienced with like that one character who was actually the antagonist and people just didn't read it, didn't understand that. You know, this is written by a Jewish guy who obviously is probably very passionate about the Holocaust. Right. Now, would I have used that format to explain that? Probably not. But like, for somebody to get upset about something that's part of his people's history, that was obviously one of the worst, if not the worst thing, as far as a human genocide to ever happen. I mean, you know, yeah, it was ugly. It's messy. It's really bad what happened. And so I don't know. I'm not sure, like I said, that graphic novel is the best way to portray that. But, you know, it'd be one thing if it was just some, you know, guy that wrote it, but somebody that's actually connected to everything that's going on. I mean, maybe that was a way for him to express his pain, and I don't know. I think it's all stuff we have to consider when we think about those things.
So we are going to have a book reading club where we discuss forbidden love with redeeming love.
Oh my
so
gosh!
If anybody wants to join that, it'll be during...
Is forbidden love a book too? It sounds like it would be a Christian book.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
You know, between
Poor April.
I know they pick on me way too much.
Yeah, well, you deserve it.
Whatever.
And you're a great sport. So,
okay.
All right, everybody. Well, we're going to wrap up because I'm exhausted, to be quite honest, because we've been talking for like an hour. Once again, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, complaints, send those to April at journeyshepherdsville.com. If you have anything that's applicable to the podcast, send that to podcast@journeyshepherdsville.com. Thanks for being with us. We'll talk to you next time.